I, 28F, never thought I'd be in this situation, but here I am, feeling completely lost and betrayed. I've been married to Owen, 30M, for 3 years, and we've been together for a total of 7 years. When we first started dating, I was young and naive, and I ignored so many red flags because I was head over heels for him. Owen and I met during our college years. I was a journalism major, passionate about uncovering truths and telling stories. He was studying business, always talking about his big plans for the future. We hit it off immediately, bonding over our shared love for indie films and obscure 80s bands. Our first date was at a tiny, hole-in-the-wall record store where we spent hours flipping through vinyl and swapping stories about our favorite concerts. From the beginning, Owen's mother, Diane, 55F, was overly involved in our relationship. At first, I thought it was just a close mother-son bond, but I quickly realized it was much more than that. I remember the first time I met her, at a family dinner Owen invited me to after we'd been dating for a few months. She greeted me with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes and immediately launched into a series of questions that felt more like an interrogation than small talk. Diane would constantly make snide remarks about my appearance, my career, and even my family background. She'd say things like, "Oh, you're wearing that? I guess not everyone can afford designer clothes," or "It's so nice that Owen is willing to date someone from such a humble background." Each comment was like a tiny dagger, slowly chipping away at my self-esteem. I tried to brush it off, thinking she'd warm up to me eventually. Owen would always defend her, saying she was just protective and that I was being too sensitive. Looking back, I should have seen this as a major red flag. But I was so in love with Owen, and I wanted so badly to be accepted by his family, that I kept making excuses for Diane's behavior. Things really took a turn for the worse when Owen proposed to me on my 25th birthday. We had a small gathering at a nice restaurant with both our families. I remember being so nervous, wondering how Diane would react. When Owen got down on one knee and presented the ring, I was over the moon. But the moment was short-lived. Diane stood up, grabbed the ring box, and examined it closely. She then turned to Owen and said, "Sweetie, don't you think this is a bit excessive for her? I mean, your father didn't even spend this much on my engagement ring." I was mortified, but Owen just laughed it off and put the ring on my finger. The rest of the evening was tense, with Diane making passive-aggressive comments about how I was trapping her son. My parents, bless them, tried to smooth things over, but the damage was done. What should have been one of the happiest nights of my life was tainted by Diane's behavior. The wedding planning was a nightmare. Diane insisted on being involved in every decision, from the venue to the color of the napkins. She'd show up unannounced at our apartment with bridal magazines and vendor catalogs, always pushing for more expensive options that we couldn't afford. She even tried to convince Owen that we should postpone the wedding, saying we were rushing into things. I remember one particularly heated argument over the guest list. Diane wanted to invite a bunch of her friends and distant relatives we'd never even met. When I tried to explain that we were trying to keep the wedding small and intimate, she accused me of trying to exclude her family. Owen, as usual, tried to play peacemaker, which often meant giving in to his mother's demands. Despite all this, we got married, and I thought things would get better. The wedding day itself was beautiful, even though Diane managed to cause a scene by loudly criticizing the catering to anyone who would listen. But seeing Owen's face as I walked down the aisle, I thought all the stress and drama had been worth it. For a while, things did improve. Owen and I moved to a different city for work, which meant less frequent visits from Diane. We were happy, building our careers and talking about starting a family. I threw myself into my work, finally landing a position as a feature writer for a respected online magazine. Owen was climbing the corporate ladder, impressing his bosses with his innovative ideas and work ethic. We'd spend our weekends exploring our new city, trying out quirky restaurants and going to local art exhibitions. We even adopted a dog, a scruffy little terrier mix we named Banjo. For the first time since we'd gotten together, I felt like we were truly building our own life, free from Diane's influence. Then, about 6 months ago, Owen got a promotion that required us to move back to our hometown. I was hesitant, but Owen was excited about the opportunity, so I agreed. I tried to stay positive, telling myself that maybe things would be different this time. Maybe Diane had mellowed out, or maybe our time away had given her some perspective. That's when everything started to unravel. Diane began showing up at our house unannounced, often when Owen was at work. She'd criticize my housekeeping, my cooking, and even how I organized our closets. She'd say things like, "Oh, is this how you keep Owen's shirts? No wonder they always look so wrinkled when he visits me." Or she'd rearrange our furniture while I was out, claiming she was just trying to make the space more functional. I tried to talk to Owen about it, but he always dismissed my concerns. He'd say, "That's just how Mom is. She means well." It was like he couldn't see how much her constant presence and criticism were affecting me. I started to feel like a guest in my own home, always on edge, waiting for the next cutting remark or boundary violation. Things got even worse when I found out I was pregnant 3 months ago. I was ecstatic, and Owen seemed happy too. We'd been trying for a baby for a few months, and I thought this might be the thing that finally brought us all together. I had visions of Diane softening, of her excitement about becoming a grandmother overriding her need to criticize me. But when we told Diane, her reaction was less than enthusiastic. She looked at me suspiciously and said, "Are you sure it's Owen's? I mean, you've been looking a bit different lately." The accusation hit me like a slap in the face. I'd never given Owen any reason to doubt my faithfulness, and for his mother to suggest such a thing was beyond hurtful. I was shocked and hurt. Owen, instead of defending me, just laughed awkwardly and changed the subject. From that moment on, Diane's behavior became even more aggressive. She'd make comments about my weight gain, saying things like, "I hope you're not using the pregnancy as an excuse to let yourself go. Owen deserves a wife who takes care of herself." She also started showing up at my prenatal appointments, uninvited. She'd question the doctor about every little thing, implying that I wasn't capable of taking care of myself or the baby. She'd bring up old wives' tales about pregnancy, insisting that I follow them to the letter. "Don't raise your arms above your head, or the cord will wrap around the baby's neck," she'd say, "or you shouldn't be eating that, it'll give the baby birthmarks." Owen thought it was sweet that his mother was so involved. He couldn't seem to understand why I was feeling smothered and undermined. Our arguments about Diane became more frequent and intense. I felt like I was constantly having to justify my feelings and defend my right to make decisions about my own pregnancy. Last week, things came to a head. I overheard Diane talking to Owen on the phone. She was saying, "I just don't trust her, honey. I think you need to get a paternity test as soon as the baby is born. You can't be too careful these days." My heart sank as I listened, waiting to hear Owen's response, hoping against hope that he would finally stand up to his mother. I confronted Owen about it, and to my horror, he agreed with his mother. He said, "It's not that I don't trust you, but Mom has a point. It's better to be safe than sorry, right?" In that moment, I felt like my entire world was crumbling around me. All the years we'd spent together, all the trust we'd built, seemed to mean nothing in the face of his mother's baseless accusations. I felt like I couldn't breathe. Without really thinking about it, I packed a bag and went to stay with my sister, Rachel, 32F. Rachel has always been my rock, the one person I could always count on to give me straight advice. As I sat on her couch, sobbing and trying to explain everything that had happened, I realized just how much I'd been bottling up over the years. I've been here for a week now, ignoring calls and messages from both Owen and Diane. Owen keeps saying he wants to talk things out, but I don't even know where to begin. How can I stay married to someone who trusts his mother's baseless accusations over his own wife? How can I raise a child in an environment where I'm constantly being second-guessed and undermined? I'm 20 weeks pregnant, emotionally exhausted, and completely lost. I don't know if I can go back to that house, knowing that my husband and his mother think so little of me. At the same time, I'm terrified of the idea of raising this baby alone. I always imagined I'd have a partner to share all the joys and challenges of parenthood with, and now that dream seems to be slipping away. I guess I'm looking for advice. Am I overreacting? Should I give Owen another chance to explain himself? Or is this the final straw in a series of red flags I've been ignoring for years? Part of me wants to fight for my marriage, to try and make Owen see how his mother's behavior is destroying our relationship. But another part of me wonders if it's too late, if the damage has already been done. Any input would be appreciated because right now, I feel like I'm drowning in a sea of uncertainty and betrayal. I never thought I'd be facing the possibility of being a single mother at 28, but here I am, trying to figure out what's best for me and my unborn child. Update when it's been about a month since my last post, and a lot has happened. First, I want to thank everyone for their support and advice. Reading through all your comments and messages has really helped me gain some perspective on my situation. It's been comforting to know that I'm not alone in dealing with these kinds of family issues. After spending 2 weeks at my sister's place, I decided it was time to face Owen. Those 2 weeks were a roller coaster of emotions. Some days, I'd wake up feeling strong and determined to move on with my life, with or without Owen. Other days, I'd find myself sobbing uncontrollably, missing the life we'd built together and fearing for my future as a single mother. Rachel was amazing through it all. She gave me space when I needed it, but was always there with a shoulder to cry on or a pint of ice cream when things got really tough. She even took a few days off work to go with me to a prenatal checkup, knowing how nervous I was about going alone. Finally, after many long talks with Rachel and some sessions with the therapist she recommended, I felt ready to talk to Owen. I asked him to meet me at a neutral location, a coffee shop near my sister's house. I was nervous, but I knew I needed to stand my ground. When we met, Owen immediately started apologizing. He looked terrible, like he hadn't been sleeping well. Part of me felt a twinge of satisfaction seeing him so distraught, but mostly I just felt sad. This wasn't how I had imagined our lives together would be, especially with a baby on the way. Owen said he'd had time to think about everything and realized how hurtful his actions were. He admitted that he'd let his mother's influence cloud his judgment and that he should have trusted me unconditionally. He talked about how he'd always struggled to stand up to his mother, how from a young age he'd been conditioned to put her feelings and opinions above everything else. I listened to him, but I also made it clear that his behavior was unacceptable. I told him about all the times I'd felt undermined and disrespected because of his mother's actions and his failure to set boundaries. I explained how his agreement to a paternity test was the last straw. It showed a fundamental lack of trust in our relationship. As I spoke, I could see the realization dawning on Owen's face. It was like he was finally seeing our relationship from my perspective, understanding the toll his mother's behavior and his own passivity had taken on me. He broke down crying, saying he'd been a terrible husband and that he wanted to make things right. Owen told me he'd spoken to his father, Robert, 58M, about the situation. Apparently, Robert had finally had enough of Diane's behavior and had given Owen a wake-up call about how he was treating me. Owen said his father had shared some hard truths about his own marriage to Diane, and how he regretted not setting firmer boundaries early on. This revelation about Robert surprised me. In all our years together, I'd always seen Robert as a quiet, passive figure, someone who stayed out of conflicts and let Diane take the lead. Learning that he had finally spoken up gave me a glimmer of hope that maybe, just maybe, things could change. Owen said he was ready to set firm boundaries with his mother and even suggested we move to a different city to get some distance. He talked about job opportunities he'd been looking into, places far enough away that we couldn't be surprised by impromptu visits from Diane. He also offered to go to couples counseling to work on our communication and trust issues. I was torn. Part of me wanted to believe him and give our marriage another chance, especially with the baby on the way. The idea of raising our child in a loving, united family was so tempting. But another part of me couldn't forget how easily he'd sided with his mother over me. The memory of him agreeing to a paternity test still stung sharply. After a lot of thought, I told Owen I needed more time. I agreed to start couples counseling, but I made it clear that I wasn't ready to move back in with him yet. I also insisted that before we could work on our marriage, he needed to confront his mother about her behavior. To my surprise, Owen agreed without hesitation. He asked if I would be willing to be present when he talked to his parents, as he felt he might need the support. I was hesitant but eventually agreed. The idea of facing Diane made my stomach churn, but I knew this confrontation was necessary if we had any hope of moving forward. The confrontation with Diane was intense. We met at Owen's parents' house, with Robert present as well. Owen started by telling his mother that her behavior towards me had been unacceptable and that if she wanted to have a relationship with him or her future grandchild, things needed to change. Diane, predictably, didn't take it well. She accused me of turning her son against her and tried to guilt-trip Owen by bringing up all she'd done for him over the years. She talked about the sacrifices she'd made, the long hours she'd worked to put him through college, the home-cooked meals and clean laundry she'd always provided. But Owen stood firm. He listed out all the hurtful things she'd said and done, and how it had nearly cost him his marriage. He talked about the anxiety and stress her constant criticism had caused me, especially during the pregnancy. It was hard to hear it all laid out like that, but it was also validating to have Owen finally acknowledging the impact of her behavior. What surprised me most was Robert's reaction. He backed up Owen completely, telling Diane that her behavior had been out of line for years and that he was tired of it too. He said if she didn't change, she might lose not just her son but her husband as well. Seeing Robert stand up to Diane made me realize how much her behavior had affected their marriage too. Diane broke down crying, alternating between apologies and accusations. She tried to paint herself as the victim, saying she only wanted what was best for her son. But Owen made it clear that until she could sincerely apologize and change her behavior, she wouldn't be welcome in our lives or around our child. As we left, I felt a mix of emotions. I was proud of Owen for finally standing up to his mother, but I was also wary. Years of behavior don't change overnight, and I knew we had a long road ahead of us. The confrontation had been draining, and as soon as we got in the car, I burst into tears. Owen held me, and for the first time in months, I felt like we were truly on the same team. For now, I'm still staying at my sister's place. Owen and I are attending couples counseling twice a week, and he's also started individual therapy to work on his issues with his mother. We're taking things day by day, and while I'm cautiously optimistic, I'm also keeping my guard up. The pregnancy is progressing well, and feeling our baby kick has been a bright spot in all this turmoil. I'm now 24 weeks along, and we found out we're having a little girl. Despite everything, I'm excited about becoming a mother, even if I'm still unsure about the future of my marriage. I'll update again when there are significant developments. Thank you all again for your support and advice. Update 2. It's been 3 months since my last update, and I'm now 36 weeks pregnant. A lot has happened, and I wanted to share the developments with you all. First, the good news: Owen has been making significant progress in therapy. He's been working hard on setting boundaries with his mother and prioritizing our relationship. We've continued with couples counseling, and it's been helping us communicate better and rebuild trust. It hasn't been easy. There have been tough sessions where we've had to confront painful truths about our relationship and ourselves. But slowly, we're learning to understand each other better. About a month ago, I felt comfortable enough to move back in with Owen. It wasn't an easy decision, and I spent many sleepless nights weighing the pros and cons. Rachel was worried about me going back, afraid I might be setting myself up for more heartbreak. But I felt it was important to give our marriage a real chance, especially with the baby due so soon. The first few days back were awkward. We tiptoed around each other, both afraid of saying or doing the wrong thing. But gradually, we started to fall back into old routines, making dinner together, watching our favorite shows, taking Banjo for walks in the park. Owen has been incredibly supportive, taking care of me during these last stages of pregnancy and making sure I'm comfortable. He's been at every doctor's appointment, asked thoughtful questions, and even signed us up for birthing classes. We've been working on the nursery together, painting the walls a soft yellow and assembling furniture. It's been a bonding experience, imagining our daughter in this space and talking about the kind of parents we want to be. These moments give me hope that we can build a happy family life together. Now, for the not-so-good news, Diane hasn't changed as much as we'd hoped. While she's not as openly hostile as before, she's found more subtle ways to try and insert herself into our lives. She's been sending Owen daily text messages asking about the baby and making suggestions about everything from names to nursery decorations. At first, Owen would respond to every message, but after we discussed it in therapy, he started to limit his responses. Last week, things came to a head again. Diane showed up at our house unannounced, claiming she had some baby clothes to drop off. When I opened the door, she pushed past me into the house, saying she needed to see how we had set up the nursery. I was alone at home and felt very uncomfortable. My heart was racing, and I could feel the baby kicking, as if she could sense my distress. I asked her to leave, but she ignored me and went straight to the baby's room. She started criticizing everything, from the color of the walls to the type of crib we had chosen. When I again insisted that she leave, she turned to me and said, "I'm just trying to make sure my granddaughter has the best. It's not my fault you don't know how to properly prepare for a baby." I'd had enough. I felt a surge of protective instinct, not just for myself but for my unborn daughter. I told her in no uncertain terms that she was not welcome in our home without an invitation and that her behavior was unacceptable. My voice was shaking, but I stood my ground. I then called Owen at work and asked him to come home immediately. When Owen arrived, he was furious with his mother. It was the first time I'd ever seen him truly angry with her. He reiterated the boundaries we had set and told her that if she couldn't respect them, she wouldn't be allowed to see the baby at all. Diane left in tears, but not before accusing me of turning her son against her once again. After she left, Owen and I had a long talk. We decided that for the time being, all communication with Diane would go through Owen, and she would not be allowed in our home or at the hospital when the baby is born unless explicitly invited. It was a difficult decision, especially for Owen, but he agreed it was necessary for our family's well-being. This incident has been a wake-up call for both of us. While we've made progress in our relationship, it's clear that dealing with Diane will be an ongoing challenge. Owen has promised to be more proactive in handling his mother, and I'm cautiously optimistic. He's even suggested that we might need to consider moving further away if things don't improve. As for me, I'm focusing on the upcoming birth of our daughter. We've decided on the name Lily, after my grandmother. The nursery is finally complete, despite Diane's criticisms, and it's become my favorite room in the house. I often find myself sitting in the rocking chair, imagining holding Lily and singing her to sleep. My doctor says everything looks good, and we're just waiting for Lily to make her appearance. I'm a mix of excitement and nerves, excited to meet our daughter, but nervous about the birth and the changes she'll bring to our lives. I'm nervous about becoming a mother, especially with all the family drama, but I'm also excited. Owen and I are in a much better place than we were a few months ago, and I'm hopeful that we can face whatever challenges come our way together. We've been through so much already, and in a way, it's made us stronger as a couple. I'll update again after the baby is born. Thank you all for your continued support and advice. It's been invaluable during this difficult time. Update 3. Hello everyone. It's been about 2 months since my last update, and I wanted to share the latest developments with you all. First and foremost, our daughter Lily was born 5 weeks ago. The birth was an intense experience, 18 hours of labor that tested my strength in ways I never imagined. But the moment they placed Lily on my chest, all the pain and exhaustion faded away. She's a healthy, beautiful baby girl with Owen's eyes and my nose. Becoming parents has been an incredible experience for both Owen and me. Despite all the challenges we faced, seeing Lily's face and holding her in our arms has made it all worth it. The first few weeks have been a whirlwind of sleepless nights, diaper changes, and figuring out breastfeeding. It's been exhausting but also filled with moments of pure joy. Lily's first smile, the way she grips our fingers with her tiny hand, the soft sound she makes when she's sleeping. Now, onto the family situation. I'm happy to report that Owen has continued to be supportive and has maintained firm boundaries with his mother. Diane was not allowed at the hospital during Lily's birth, as we had decided. This decision caused some drama, with Diane calling Owen repeatedly and even trying to guilt-trip him through other family members. But Owen stood his ground, and we were able to enjoy those first precious moments with our daughter in peace. Since we've been home, Diane has made several attempts to visit. Owen has been handling these requests, always making it clear that visits need to be planned in advance and that any disrespectful behavior towards me or our parenting choices will result in the visit ending immediately. We allowed Diane to visit Lily for the first time last week. The visit was tense, but manageable. Diane made a few comments about how we were holding the baby or how the nursery was set up, but Owen quickly shut down any criticism. He reminded her that we are Lily's parents and our decisions are final. It was gratifying to see Owen stand up for us without hesitation. I'm proud of how Owen has been handling the situation. He's been a wonderful father to Lily and a supportive partner to me. He's been taking night shifts with the baby, learning how to change diapers and soothe her cries. Our relationship has grown stronger through all of this, and while we still have our challenges, we're facing them together. As for me, I'm adjusting to motherhood. It's exhausting but incredibly rewarding. There are moments when I feel overwhelmed, wondering if I'm doing everything right. But then Lily will look up at me with her big eyes, and I know that we'll figure it out together. I'm grateful for Owen's support and for the fact that we've been able to present a united front in dealing with Diane. Looking back on everything that's happened over the past year, I can hardly believe how much has changed. There were moments when I thought my marriage was over, but through hard work, therapy, and a commitment to change, Owen and I have managed to rebuild our relationship on a stronger foundation. That's not to say everything is perfect. We still have our disagreements, and dealing with Diane will likely be an ongoing issue. But we're in a much better place now, with clearer boundaries and better communication. We're both committed to creating a loving, stable home for Lily, and that shared goal has brought us closer together. Thank you all for your support throughout this journey. Your advice and encouragement have been invaluable. While I don't plan on making any more updates, I wanted to let you know that things have turned out better than I could have hoped. Lily is the light of our lives, and Owen and I are committed to giving her the loving, drama-free home she deserves.